7 months after burying my husband, Harold, I heard my financial advisor's voice crack with fear over the phone line. Angela, your son just forged your signature on a withdrawal request. He is draining the accounts. I looked at the family photo on the mantel and realized Charles hadn't just robbed us blind. He'd been counting on me being too old, too confused, and too buried in grief to notice he was picking my bones clean. The only problem was I wasn't a helpless widow. I was very much alive and suddenly very, very angry. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me tell you how I got to this point. The house was too quiet. That's the first thing you notice when you live alone after 45 years of marriage. The silence doesn't just sit there. It presses down on you. I was sitting in Harold's old leather recliner, the one with the worn spot on the right armrest where his wedding ring used to rub against the leather. I had a cup of chamomile tea in my hand, watching the steam rise, trying to convince myself I was ready for bed. I wasn't. Sleep doesn't come easy when the other side of the bed is empty. This house was our masterpiece. We bought it when it was a fixer-upper in 1978. We scraped penny skip vacations and drove used cars for decades just to pay off the mortgage early. Harold used to say, "Angie, when I'm gone, I want you to be safe. No banks, no debts, just you and the garden." He worked himself into the ground to give me that security. When the phone rang, it startled me so bad, I spilled hot tea on my wrist. I looked at the clock on the mantel. 9:03 p.m. Nobody calls at this hour unless someone has died or someone is in trouble. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached for the cordless phone on the side table. "Hello." My voice cracked. I hadn't spoken out loud since noon. "Angela? It's David. David Miller." My stomach dropped. David was our financial advisor. He had been managing our retirement accounts for 15 years. He was a man of strict routine. He called every quarter, always at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, to give us a boring update about mutual funds. He did not call at night. "David, is everything all right?" I asked, grabbing a napkin to dab at the tea on my wrist. "Are you alone, Angela?" His voice wasn't professional. It was tight, urgent. "Yes, I'm alone. What's going on?" "I need you to listen to me very carefully," he said. I could hear papers shuffling in the background, frantic and loud. I was reviewing the transaction logs for the end of the month. I usually don't do this so late, but something flagged in the system. "Angela, there's a withdrawal request here for the emergency fund." "The big one." I frowned, confusion clouding my fear. "I didn't request any withdrawal, David. I haven't touched that money. That's for my long-term care." "I know," he said, and I could hear him take a shaky breath. "The paperwork is here. It's signed Angela. It has your signature on it. It looks perfect. But I checked the date on the notary stamp." "What date?" "October 14th. The air left my lungs. October 14th. I remembered that day perfectly because it was the day I tripped over the garden hose and fractured my wrist. Charles, my son, had driven me to the emergency room. I spent 6 hours in the hospital, doped up on pain medication, unable to hold a pen, let alone sign complex legal documents. I was in the hospital that day. I whispered, "David, I couldn't have signed that." "I know," David said. "That's why I'm calling. This isn't an error, Angela. This is forgery." My hand started to tremble. Forgery. That was a word for crime shows, not for my life. Not for a widow living in a quiet suburb. Well, how would someone get my account numbers? Do I need to call the police? Was I hacked? There was a pause on the line, a heavy, pregnant silence that told me David knew something he didn't want to say. "Angela," he said softly, "the transfer wasn't wired to a foreign account. It was authorized to move into the joint holding account you set up last month. The one with Charles. The room spun. I gripped the armrest of the chair. Charles. I said his name like a question. No, that's impossible. Charles has been helping me. He's the one who brings me groceries. He drives me to church. He's my rock, David. He's all I have left. The authorization came from his IP address. David said, his voice leaving no room for argument. And the signature, it's a tracing. It's too perfect. Someone had access to your old documents to copy it. I looked across the living room to the mantel. There was a framed photo of Charles and me from last Christmas. He was smiling, his arm around my shoulder, looking like the perfect, dutiful son. He had stepped up when Harold died. He told me, Mom, don't worry about the bills. I'll handle the paperwork. You just grieve. I had been so grateful. I had thanked God every night for giving me a son who cared so much. I had handed him the mail. I had given him the passwords because my eyes were getting bad, and the computer screens gave me headaches. I need you to come to my office tomorrow morning, David said, breaking my trance. Be here at 8 a.m. I'm going to print everything out. We need to freeze these accounts before the transfer clears. Okay, I said, my voice sounding hollow. I'll ask Charles to drive me. I'll tell him. No, David shouted, almost losing his composure. Angela, listen to me. Do not tell Charles. Do not call him. Do not let on that you know anything. If he knows we're on to him, he could move the rest of the money or destroy evidence. You have to come alone. Can you do that? I looked at the photo again. My beautiful boy. The boy I nursed through the chickenpox. The man who held my hand at Harold's funeral and passed me tissues. Could he really be a wolf? Or was this all a terrible mistake? I can do it. I lied. My legs felt like lead. Good. 8 a.m. Trust no one right now. Angela. Not even him. The line went dead. I sat there in the silence, the dial tone buzzing in my ear like a warning. I felt cold, a deep, bone-chilling cold that had nothing to do with the temperature of the house. I had locked the front door, but for the first time in 40 years, I realized the lock didn't matter. The thief wasn't trying to break in. He had a key. I didn't sleep a wink. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching the blades cut through the dark, waiting for the sun to come up. Every time the house settled or the refrigerator hummed, I jumped. My own home felt different now. It didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. It felt like a crime scene where the evidence was still hidden. By 7 a.m., I was in the kitchen. I made a pot of coffee, strong, black, the way Harold used to like it. I needed the bitterness to wake me up. I needed to be sharp. David, my financial advisor, had told me to come to his office immediately, but I couldn't just run out the door. Charles came over for breakfast every Wednesday morning. It was our routine. If I wasn't here, or if I acted strange, he would know something was wrong. I heard his key turn in the lock at 7:30 sharp. That sound, the metal sliding into the tumbler, used to bring me such comfort. It meant I wasn't alone. Today, it sounded like an intrusion. Morning, Mom. Charles called out. His voice was bright, cheerful, filling the hallway. He walked into the kitchen looking like $1,000,000 in his navy suit, freshly shaved, smelling of that expensive cologne he started wearing a few months ago. He looked successful. He looked trustworthy. He looked like my little boy. He kissed my cheek, and I had to use every ounce of self-control not to flinch. You look tired, Mom, he said, pulling out his usual chair. Did you have a rough night? I told you not to watch the news so late. It upsets you. Just a little toss and turn, I said, pouring him a mug of coffee. My hand was steady. I made sure of it. I'd been thinking, Charles. He took a sip, blowing on the steam. Thinking about what? About the money, I said. I dropped the words onto the table, like stones. He didn't freeze. He didn't choke on his coffee. He didn't even blink. He just set the mug down gently and gave me a soft, patient smile. The kind of smile you give a toddler who just asked a silly question. What about the money, Mom? I was thinking I'd like to see the statements. I lied. I want to go over the accounts today. Maybe go down to the bank and just check on things. It's been a few months since I really looked at the numbers, and with the economy the way it is, I watched his eyes. I was looking for panic. I was looking for guilt. But I didn't see either. Instead, I saw something that made my blood boil hotter than the coffee in my cup. Pity. He laughed. A light, airy chuckle. He reached across the table and patted my hand. His palm was warm, but his touch felt cold. Oh, Mom, he said, shaking his head. Don't worry your pretty head about that. You know how confused you get with numbers lately. The air left my lungs. Confused. Yes, confused, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, like he was sharing a secret. Remember last week? You called me in a panic because you lost your car keys. We found them in the refrigerator, remember? And the week before that, you forgot we had a lunch date. I stared at him. I had put the keys in the fridge because I was unloading groceries and answered the phone at the same time. It was a simple mistake. Anyone could make it, but he was twisting it. He was turning a moment of distraction into a diagnosis. Everyone loses their keys, Charles, I said, my voice hardening. Of course, he soothed, squeezing my hand. But you've been through so much trauma, Mom. Dad's death hit you hard. The stress causes slips. That's why I took over the finances. Remember? Dad wanted you to rest. He didn't want you stressing over spreadsheets and market fluctuations. You just relax. Enjoy your garden. Let me handle the heavy lifting. He was doing it so smoothly. He wasn't yelling, he was pampering. He was wrapping me in cotton wool so tight I couldn't move. He was using my grief, my husband's death, and my age to paint me as an incompetent old woman who needed a keeper. And the worst part, if I hadn't received that phone call last night, I would have believed him. I would have felt grateful. I would have thought, oh, silly me, Charles is right. I am getting forgetful. Thank God I have him. But I knew the truth now. This wasn't kindness. It was a cage. I suppose you're right, I said, forcing a weak smile. I pulled my hand away from his. I have been a bit scatterbrained lately. Exactly, he said, looking relieved. He checked his gold watch. A watch I realized he probably bought with my retirement fund. I've got to run. Big meeting at the firm today. You just take it easy, okay? Maybe take a nap. I will, I said. He kissed the top of my head, grabbed a piece of toast, and walked out the door. Love you, Mom. Love you too, I whispered. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. As soon as I heard his car engine fade down the street, I moved. The confused old lady vanished. I went to the hallway closet and grabbed my coat. I didn't reach for my car keys. Charles had access to the GPS app on my phone that linked to the car's navigation system. He claimed he installed it for my safety so he could find me if I got lost. Now I knew better. He wanted to know where I was every second of the day. I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I walked to the kitchen phone, the landline he couldn't track, and dialed the number for the local taxi service, the one Harold used to use when his truck was in the shop. Yellow cab? I need a car to 422 Maple Drive. No, not the airport. Downtown. And please hurry. I grabbed my purse and stepped out onto the porch. I left my cell phone on the kitchen counter. Let him track that. Let him think I'm sitting at home, drinking tea and taking a nap. By the time the taxi pulled up, my hands had stopped shaking. I wasn't just a grieving widow anymore. I was a woman on a mission. Charles thought I was losing my mind. He was about to find out exactly how sharp I really was. The taxi ride downtown felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I stared out the window at the familiar streets of Chicago, but everything looked distorted, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. When the cab pulled up to the glass building where David's firm was located, I paid the driver in cash, careful not to use the debit card Charles tracked, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. My knees felt weak, but I forced myself to walk through those revolving doors. I wasn't just a client today. I was a victim looking for proof. David was waiting for me in the lobby. He didn't smile. He didn't offer me coffee or ask about the weather. He just nodded, swiped his security badge, and led me straight to the elevator. The silence between us was heavy, suffocating. It confirmed everything my gut had been screaming since last night. This wasn't a clerical error. This was a disaster. When we got to his office, his desk was covered in paper. Stacks of it. Statements, photocopies of checks, legal documents. It looked like a war room. "Sit down, Angela," David said, closing the door and locking it. I sat. I folded my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking. "Tell me," I said. "Don't sugarcoat it. David, I'm 72 years old. I've buried a husband and parents. I can handle the truth. How much did he take?" David took a deep breath and slid the first piece of paper across the mahogany desk. It wasn't a bank statement. It was a lease agreement. "Do you recognize this car?" he asked. I looked at the photo attached to the document. It was a sleek black sports car. A Porsche, the kind of car you see teenagers or midlife crisis men driving in the movies. "No," I said. "I drive a Buick. Charles drives that minivan for the kids." "What is this?" "It's a lease, Angela, in your name, co-signed by Charles using his power of attorney. The payments are $1,200 a month. They've been coming out of your investment account since February." My mouth fell open. $1,200. That was more than my grocery budget for 3 months. He told me he was helping me diversify my portfolio. I whispered. He said he was moving money around to get better interest rates. He was moving it, all right, David said grimly. He flipped to the next stack. These pages were covered in black lines, highlighting transaction after transaction. "These are transfers to online gambling sites," David said. "BetMGM, DraftKings, Golden Nugget, $500 here, $2,000 there." One night in March, he dropped $4,000 in 3 hours. "All from your savings." I felt sick, physically sick. My stomach churned. Harold and I never gambled. We didn't even buy lottery tickets. We believed that wealth came from hard work and saving, not luck. To see our life savings, money Harold had sweated for in the factory for 40 years, being thrown away on digital poker games, it was a slap in the face to his memory. "He has a problem," I said, trying to rationalize it, trying to find the motherly excuse. "It's an addiction. He needs help. He needs a lawyer." David cut in sharp. "Angela, the car and the gambling are bad, but they aren't the worst of it." He reached for a thick document bound with a blue cover. He hesitated before sliding it over, looking at me with genuine pity in his eyes. That look scared me more than anything else. "What is that?" I asked. "This," David said, tapping the cover, "is a home equity line of credit. A HELOC." I stared at him blankly. "I don't have a line of credit. We paid off the house in '98. We burned the mortgage papers in the fireplace. It was one of the happiest days of our lives. I own that house free and clear." "You did," David corrected gently. "Until 4 months ago. Charles took out a line of credit against the equity in your home. He borrowed $150,000 against the value of the house." The room started to spin. I gripped the edge of the desk. He mortgaged my house? Yes, and he's already spent most of it. And Angela, he hasn't made a payment in 2 months. The bank sent a default notice to an email address he controls. You never saw it. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. My house, my sanctuary, the place where I raised my babies, the place where Harold died in his sleep, the place where every mark on the wall had a story. It was the only thing I had that made me feel safe. It was my legacy for the grandchildren. If he doesn't pay, I choked out. They will foreclose. David said, they will take the house. Angela, you could lose everything. You could be out on the street. The thought hit me like a physical blow. Me, Angela Stern, homeless? A bag lady? After a lifetime of doing everything right, after a lifetime of saving coupons and turning off lights to save electricity? How? I whispered. How could he do this to me? He loves me. David stood up and walked around the desk. He stood next to me and pointed a finger at the dates on the statements. This is the part that makes me sick, David said, his voice low and angry. Look at the timeline, Angela. Look at the date of the first withdrawal. I squinted at the paper. January 14th. January 14th. David repeated. That was the day after Harold's funeral. I froze. I remembered that day. I was in bed, unable to move, paralyzed by grief. Charles had come over. He had brought me soup. He had sat by my bed and held my hand, telling me, "Don't worry, Mom. I've got you. I'll take care of everything." He had left my bedside, gone downstairs to my computer, and transferred $10,000 into his own account. And this one, David pointed to the car lease. February 2nd. February 2nd. That was the day we went to the stonemason to pick out Harold's headstone. I remember Charles waiting in the lobby while I cried over font choices. He wasn't waiting. He was on his phone, closing the deal on a Porsche. While I was choosing a casket, he was choosing a sports car. While I was burying his father, he was burying me in debt. Something inside me broke then, but it wasn't a break that left me in pieces. It was a break that snapped me into focus. The grief, the confusion, the motherly instinct to protect my cub, it all evaporated. I looked up at David. My eyes were dry. He didn't just steal my money. I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. He stole my grief. He used my husband's death as a distraction to rob me blind. Yes, David said. He did. I stood up. I didn't feel weak anymore. I felt cold. A cold, hard rage that settled deep in my bones. Make copies, I told David. Make copies of everything. The car, the gambling, the house. Especially the house. What are you going to do? David asked, looking worried. Angela, we should call the police right now from this office. No, I said. Not yet. If I call the police now, he'll run. Or he'll try to hide the rest of the money. Or he'll lie and say I authorized it. I need him to admit it. I need him to say it to my face. Angela, that's dangerous. He's not a stranger, David. He's my son. I changed his diapers. I taught him to walk. I know his weak spots. I picked up the file with the house documents. He thinks I'm a confused old woman who loses her keys. He thinks I'm helpless without him. I walked to the door and looked back. He forgot who raised him. I said, he forgot that his father was the gentle one. I'm the one who handled the discipline, and he is long overdue for a lesson. I walked out of that office with the file tucked under my arm. It wasn't just paper. It was ammunition, and I was heading home to wait for the wolf. The house was empty when I got back, but it felt crowded with ghosts. I locked the front door behind me, engaging the deadbolt, the chain, and the handle lock. It was a habit Harold had instilled in me, but today It felt like I was fortifying a castle. I walked into the living room and collapsed into Harold's leather recliner. The leather was cold. It didn't smell like his aftershave anymore. It just smelled like old dust and lemon polish. I sat there, clutching that blue folder of evidence to my chest, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I wailed. I didn't just cry. I let out a sound that came from the bottom of my stomach, a raw, ugly sound of a mother whose heart was breaking. The anger from the office had evaporated on the ride home, replaced by a crushing, suffocating guilt. The questions started swirling in my head, attacking me like angry bees. Where did I go wrong? I looked at the mantelpiece, at the row of school photos. Charles in first grade with his missing front tooth. Charles at graduation, looking so proud in his cap and gown. I remembered the nights I stayed up helping him with science projects. I remembered the times I snuck him extra cookies when his father said no. Did I love him too much? Did I make life too easy for him? Harold used to say, "Angie, you coddle the boy. He needs to learn the value of $1." I would always hush him, telling him he was too hard on the kid. Now, sitting in the silence of my plundered life, I realized Harold was right. I had shielded Charles from every storm, and because he never felt the rain, he thought he could just take shelter wherever he pleased, even if he had to tear down my house to build it. I closed my eyes and whispered, "God, help me." I'm a God-fearing woman. I was raised on the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not steal. That was clear. But so was honor thy father and thy mother. Charles had broken both. But then another verse crept into my mind, one that twisted the knife in my gut. Love covers a multitude of sins. Wasn't that a mother's job? To forgive? To cover the sins? If I called the police, I would be the one sending my own son to prison. I would be the one destroying his life. Could I live with that? Could I sit in a church pew on Sunday knowing I was the reason my son was behind bars? I felt sick. I almost stood up right then to shred the papers. Maybe I could just sell the jewelry. Maybe I could take a reverse mortgage to pay off his mess. I could fix this. I could save him one last time. Then my hand brushed against the side table, knocking over a small stack of mail I hadn't opened yet. A card slid out. It was an old anniversary card from Harold that I kept as a bookmark in my Bible. I picked it up. His handwriting was scratchy, familiar. I opened it. To my Angie, the heart of this home, the protector of our peace. Thank you for keeping us safe. The protector of our peace. I stared at those words until they blurred. Harold didn't work double shifts at the plant, so Charles could gamble it away on a phone app. He didn't pay off this house, so Charles could use it as collateral for a sports car. Harold built this legacy for us, for the grandchildren. If I covered for Charles now, I wasn't protecting the peace. I was financing the war. I was funding his addiction. If I let him get away with this, what would he take next? Would he steal from his own children? Would he empty his daughter's college fund, just like he emptied my retirement? Real love isn't letting someone destroy you. Real love is stopping them before they destroy themselves completely. Enabling him wasn't love. It was participation in his sin. I sat up straight. The tears stopped. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. "I'm sorry, Charles," I whispered to the empty room. "But I love you too much to let you win." I got up and went to the kitchen. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't make tea. I went into general mode. That's what Harold used to call it when I scrubbed the floors or organized a bake sale. But today, the mission was different. I cleared the kitchen table completely. No placemats, no centerpiece. Just a hard, wooden surface. I took the papers out of the folder David had given me. I laid them out in a row. The car lease, the gambling records, the home equity line of credit, the forged signature. I lined them up like a prosecutor preparing a case. Then I went to the junk drawer and pulled out my smartphone. Charles had bought it for me, claiming he wanted me to have the best technology. Now, I used it against him. I found the voice recorder app, the one he showed me how to use, so I could record my grocery lists because my memory was fading. I tested it. Testing 1, 2. Charles, tell me the truth. I played it back. Clear as a bell. I set the phone in the center of the table, face down. But recording. I covered it with a napkin holder. It was invisible, but it was listening. I wasn't waiting for a son to come home for dinner anymore. I was setting a trap for a criminal. I went upstairs to the bedroom and opened the small safe in the closet. Harold's old service pistol wasn't there. We had sold it years ago. But inside was something heavier. My will. The deed to the house. The life insurance policies. I took them all out. I wasn't going to let Charles find them if things went south. I hid them under the loose floorboard in the guest room closet, a spot only Harold and I knew about. I walked back downstairs and sat at the head of the table. I looked at the clock. 5:45 p.m. Charles would be here at 6 o'clock. He never missed a free meal. My heart was hammering, but my hands were steady. I wasn't praying for a miracle anymore. I was praying for strength. I was praying that when he looked me in the eye and lied, I wouldn't crumble. I heard a car door slam outside. It was time. I folded my hands on the table, right next to the evidence of his betrayal. The prayer was over. Now, the battle began. The sound of the front door opening was different this time. It wasn't just a noise. It was the sound of my old life ending and a terrifying new one beginning. Charles walked in whistling. He actually whistled. He carried a bottle of wine in one hand and a bouquet of grocery store carnations in the other, peace offerings bought with money he had stolen from me. "Hey, Mom, something smells good," he called out, heading toward the kitchen. I picked up some red. Figure we could celebrate. Celebrate what? I asked. My voice didn't shake. I was surprised by how steady it sounded, cutting through the air like a knife. Charles stopped in the doorway of the dining room. He saw me sitting at the head of the table. The lights were off, save for the chandelier directly above me. The table was bare except for the neat rows of bank statements, the Helic agreement, and the photos of the Porsche. His smile didn't vanish instantly. It froze. A flicker of annoyance crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by that patronizing softness he had perfected over the last few months. "Mom," he sighed, walking over and placing the flowers on the sideboard. "What is all this? I told you not to worry about the paperwork. Did you go digging through old files again? You know you get overwhelmed." He reached for the stack of papers closest to him. "Let's put this away. I'll order a pizza." "Don't touch them," I said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Charles pulled his hand back, startled. "Excuse me?" "Sit down, Charles." He laughed, a nervous, hacking sound. Okay. The general is in charge tonight. What's going on? Did David call you? That guy is an alarmist. I've been meaning to fire him." "David didn't just call," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "He showed me everything. The gambling sites, the sports car, the line of credit on this house." Charles sat down slowly, loosening his tie. He didn't look guilty yet. He looked like a man trying to talk his way out of a speeding ticket. "Mom, you're misinterpreting this. It looks bad on paper. I get that. But that car, that's an investment vehicle. It's a classic. Its value goes up. And the line of credit, that's for leverage. You have to spend money to make money. Dad never understood that, but I do. You lost $4,000 in 3 hours on DraftKings. I said flatly, "Is that an investment strategy?" His face flushed. "That was research. Look, the market has been volatile. I was hedging against inflation. Stop it. I slammed my hand on the table. The sound echoed in the empty house. Stop lying to me. I am not senile. I am not confused. And I am not stupid. You mortgaged my home. The home your father broke his back to pay for, so you could play high roller. You aren't investing. Charles, you are stealing. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Charles stared at the table. When he looked up, the nice son mask was gone. His eyes were cold. His jaw was set tight. Stealing, he spat the word out. You call it stealing? I call it back pay. I recoiled. Back pay? Yes. For 40 years of listening to Dad preach about hard work and saving pennies, we lived like paupers so he could hoard cash in these accounts. I wanted to go to private school. He said no. I wanted a car when I turned 16. He said, earn it. He died sitting on a pile of gold like a dragon. And for what? So you could sit here and drink tea? He stood up, pacing the room, his voice rising to a shout. I deserve that money. I was the one who drove him to chemo. I was the one who mowed the lawn every Sunday. I put in the time. And now I'm drowning in debt. Mom. Sarah wants things. The kids need things. And you're just sitting on a fortune doing nothing. I am living on it. I yelled back, standing up to meet him. That money is for my care. If I get sick, if I need a home, that was my safety net. And you cut it. I would have taken care of you, he screamed. With what? I pointed at the papers. You gambled it away. You didn't take it to help me. You took it to feed your ego. I reached for my phone. I'm done, Charles. I gave you every chance to be a man. Now I have to treat you like a criminal. What are you doing? His voice dropped. It wasn't angry anymore. It was dangerous. I'm calling the police. I'm reporting the fraud. David has already frozen the accounts, but I need a police report to save the house from foreclosure. Charles lunged across the table and grabbed my wrist. His grip was hard. It hurt. Don't do that, he hissed. Let go of me, I said, staring him down, or I will add assault to the list of charges. He let go, shoving my hand away. He ran a hand through his hair, looking wild. He looked at the door, then back at me. He realized bullying wouldn't work. He realized charm wouldn't work. So he pulled out his final weapon, the one weapon he knew could break me. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. Think about what you're doing, Mom. Really think. I have thought about it, I said, unlocking my phone screen. If you call the cops, I go to prison. There is no way around that. This is felony fraud. I'll go away for years. You should have thought of that before you signed my name. And if I go to prison, he continued, ignoring me, what do you think happens to Sarah and the kids? I froze. My grandchildren, Leo, who was 7, and Mia, who was 4. My babies. Sarah hates this city, Charles said, a cruel smile touching his lips. She hates the cold. She hates living so close to you. She's been begging me to move back to Oregon to be with her parents. The only reason we stayed was because of my job, because of the money. He took a step closer. If I go to jail, the money stops. The house goes. Sarah will pack up that minivan and drive the kids 2,000 miles away. You will never see them again. My thumb hovered over the call button. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. You won't be their grandma anymore, he taunted. You'll just be the woman who sent their daddy to jail. They will grow up hating you. Sarah will make sure of it. You will die in this big, empty house, and no one will visit you. No Christmas, no birthdays, just silence. He gestured around the room. Is the money worth that, Mom? Is saving a few bucks worth losing your family forever? The room spun. I saw the future he was painting. I saw the empty holidays. I saw the unread letters. I saw myself dying alone in a hospital bed, with no one to hold my hand. It was my worst nightmare. It was the fear that kept every widow awake at night. He saw me hesitate. He softened his voice, sensing victory. "Just put the phone down, Mom. We can fix this. I'll pay it back. I swear. We keep this in the family. Don't blow up our lives." I looked at him. I looked at the man who used to run into my arms when he scraped his knee. Now, he was holding a gun to my heart, using my grandchildren as bullets. If I hung up, I kept the family. But I lost myself. I lost Harold's legacy, and I would live the rest of my life as a hostage, knowing he could steal from me again, and I could do nothing. If I called, I lost the family. But I kept my dignity. I kept the truth. I looked down at the table. I saw Harold's handwriting on the anniversary card I had placed next to the phone. "Protector of our peace. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. Peace is the presence of justice." I looked up at Charles. I didn't see my son anymore. I saw a stranger who would burn down his own children's future to warm his hands. If I let him go, he wouldn't stop. He would drain the college funds next. He would destroy Sarah, too. Saving the family didn't mean keeping us all together in a lie. Sometimes saving the family means cutting out the rot, so the rest can survive. "I'm not losing them, Charles," I said, my voice quiet but final. He smiled, thinking he had won. "Good choice, Mom." "You didn't hear me," I said, my thumb pressing down on the green button. "I said I'm not losing them. You lost them. You lost them the day you decided that stealing their inheritance was more important than being their father." "Mom, don't. You threaten me with loneliness?" I asked, putting the phone to my ear. "I'd rather be alone with my integrity than surrounded by thieves." "Mom," he screamed, reaching for the phone. I stepped back and spoke clearly into the receiver. 911. My name is Angela Stern. I am at 422 Maple Drive. I would like to report a robbery. The perpetrator is in my house. He is my son." Charles fell back into the chair, his face turning ashen white. The arrogance was gone. The threat was gone. All that was left was the reality of what he had done. I didn't hang up. I stood there, holding the line, watching the man I gave life to realize that his mother wasn't just a victim. She was the judge, and the gavel had just come down. I watched from the living room window as the police cruiser pulled into the driveway. They didn't use the siren, thank God, but they couldn't turn off the lights. That blue strobe pulsed against the front of the house, bouncing off the oak trees Harold had planted 40 years ago. It was a silent, flashing billboard telling the whole neighborhood that the Stern house, always so quiet and respectable, was now a crime scene. I saw the blinds twitch in the house next door. Mrs. Gable was watching. She had lived there as long as we had. We had traded zucchini bread recipes and watched each other's cats. Now, she was watching my son being led out of my front door in handcuffs. Charles didn't fight. He didn't scream. He looked deflated, like a balloon that had lost its air. 2 officers walked him down the same sidewalk where he learned to ride a bike. He didn't look back at the house. He didn't look at me. He kept his head down, staring at his expensive Italian shoes shuffling against the concrete. When they put him in the back of the car, I felt a physical pain in my chest, sharp and deep. It went against every instinct I had. Mothers protect. Mothers nurture. Mothers don't dial 911 on their own children. I felt like I was cutting off my own arm. But then I looked at the table behind me. I looked at the papers. The Hellick, the gambling debts, the lies. I wasn't the one who destroyed this family. He was. I just stopped him from burying us both in the rubble. The police car drove away, the red taillights disappearing around the corner. The silence that rushed back into the house was deafening. It was over. The immediate danger was gone. But the war wasn't. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It wasn't a normal ring. It sounded aggressive. I looked at the caller ID. Sarah, my daughter-in-law. I took a breath, my hand trembling as I pressed answer. I knew this was coming. Angela. Her voice was high, shrill, bordering on hysteria. The police just called me. They said Charles is being booked. They said you called them. I did, I said, sinking into a kitchen chair. Are you insane? She screamed. I had to pull the phone away from my ear. He is your son. He is the father of your grandchildren. How could you do this? How could you call the cops on him over money? It wasn't just money, Sarah, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He forged my signature. He mortgaged my house. He stole my retirement. He was gambling it away. He was stressed, she yelled. He made a mistake. He told me he borrowed some to cover bad investments, that he was going to pay it back. He had a plan, Angela. If you had just waited, he would have fixed it. But now, you've ruined us. You hear me? You've ruined his career. Who is going to hire a felon? How are we supposed to feed the kids? He wasn't feeding the kids, Sarah. I snapped, my patience breaking. He was feeding DraftKings. He lost $4,000 in 3 hours. Did he tell you that? Did he tell you he put a lien on my home? If I hadn't stopped him, the bank would have taken my house. Where would I live then? In your spare room. You're selfish, she spat. The venom in her voice was shocking. You're an old woman sitting on a paid-off house and a fat 401k, and you couldn't help your own son when he was drowning? You chose your bank account over your family. I chose justice, I said, and I chose not to be a victim. Well, I hope you enjoy your money, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a cold, hateful whisper. Because that's all you have now. Don't call us. Don't send cards for the kids' birthdays. As far as Leo and Mia are concerned, their grandmother died tonight. The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, the silence ringing in my ears. Her words cut deeper than the theft. Selfish. That was the word that stuck. Was it selfish to want to keep the home I worked 40 years for? Was it selfish to want to eat cat food? So my son could drive a Porsche? The phone rang again, immediately. It was Harold's sister, my sister-in-law Betty. The news traveled fast in small families. Angela, Betty's voice was breathless. Sarah just called me screaming. Tell me it's not true. Tell me you didn't have Charles arrested. He stole everything, Betty, I said, too tired to explain it all again. He forged my name. He's Harold's boy. Betty cried. Harold would be turning in his grave. You handle this privately, Angela. You don't drag the police into family business. Think of the shame. Think of what people at church will say. Harold would be the one handing the officer the handcuffs. I said firmly. Harold believed in right and wrong. He didn't raise a thief. He's sick, Angela. He needs help, not prison. You're his mother. You're supposed to have mercy. I did have mercy. I said, I gave him breakfast this morning. I gave him 30 years of support. But mercy doesn't mean letting someone rob you blind. I hung up on her. I turned the ringer off. I couldn't take it anymore. The flying monkeys, that's what my granddaughter once called people who do the wicked witch's bidding. Charles had his army. They didn't see the statements. They didn't see the sneer on his face when he threatened me. They just saw a poor son and a mean old mother. I walked through the dark house, locking the doors again. I felt small. I felt incredibly old. I went into the kitchen and opened a can of soup for dinner, but I couldn't eat it. I just stirred it, watching the steam rise. Was I wrong? The doubt started to creep in, insidious and cold. Maybe I should have just let him take it. Maybe I should have sold the house and moved into a small apartment. At least I would still have my grandkids. At least I wouldn't be this monster everyone said I was. I picked up my phone, ignoring the missed calls, and opened my banking app. There it was. Account frozen. The balance was lower than it should have been, much lower, but it wasn't zero. And next to the line of credit, there was a flag, fraud alert reported. Then a text came through. It wasn't family. It was David. Angela, I just got off the phone with the bank's fraud department. Because we filed the police report tonight, the foreclosure process is halted immediately. The debt will be transferred to Charles's name as part of the criminal investigation. Your house is safe. You did it. Try to sleep. I read that text 3 times. Your house is safe. I looked around my kitchen. I looked at the wallpaper Harold and I hung together in 1995. I looked at the height chart pencil-marked on the doorframe. If I had listened to Sarah, if I had listened to Betty, this house would belong to the bank in 3 months. I would be destitute. Charles would have drained me dry and moved on to his next victim. I wasn't selfish. I was a survivor. I washed my bowl in the sink, drying it and putting it away. I walked up the stairs to my empty bedroom. I was alone. My family hated me. My neighbors were gossiping about me. But as I climbed into bed and pulled the quilt up to my chin, I realized something. I was safe. The lock on the door actually meant something tonight. The wolf was in a cage. And for the first time in 7 months, I wasn't sleeping with one eye open. I closed my eyes and let the tears come hot and fast. I cried for the son I lost, but I didn't cry for the decision I made. They tell you on TV that justice is swift. It isn't. It's a slow, grinding machine that eats up your days and keeps you awake at night. It took 6 long months to get to trial, 6 months of lawyer meetings, depositions, and staring at the calendar, dreading the day I'd have to sit in a witness box and point a finger at my own son. During those 6 months, the silence from the family was absolute. No one called to check on me. No one asked if I was okay. I went to the grocery store early in the morning to avoid running into neighbors who whispered behind their hands. I felt like a pariah in my own town, but I kept my head high. I kept my house clean, and I kept that file of evidence ready. When the day finally came, the courthouse felt like a freezer. The air conditioning was humming too loud, or maybe that was just the blood rushing in my ears. I walked in with David, my advisor, by my side. He was the only one who stood by me. When the bailiff brought Charles in, my breath hitched in my throat. I hadn't seen him since the night of the arrest. The man walking into that courtroom wasn't the slick, confident financial planner in the Italian suit. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He looked pale. He looked smaller. He hadn't shaved, and his hair, usually so perfectly styled, was limp. He looked at me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked pathetic. He widened his eyes, giving me that sad, lost puppy look he used to give me when he was 10 years old and broke a window. It was the look that used to make me melt, the look that used to make me open my wallet and fix his mistakes. But I didn't melt. I just felt a cold, hard knot in my stomach. That puppy look was a lie. That puppy look had cost me my life savings. I took the stand. The prosecutor asked me simple questions. Did you sign this? No. Did you authorize this transfer? No. Did you know about the line of credit? No. Then came the defense attorney. He tried to paint me as confused. He asked if my memory was failing. He asked if I was grieving so hard I simply forgot I told Charles to take the money. I leaned into the microphone. Sir, I said, my voice steady. I might be 72, and I might be grieving, but I know the difference between a gift and a theft. My son didn't ask for help. He took it. He looked me in the eye and told me I was crazy while he was spending my money on sports cars. The courtroom went quiet. Charles looked down at his hands. When the judge finally spoke, he didn't mince words. He was an older man, maybe my age, with stern eyes over reading glasses. He looked at Charles with pure disgust. "Mr. Stern," the judge said, "you were in a position of ultimate trust. You were given power of attorney to protect a vulnerable senior, your own mother. Instead, you used that power as a weapon. You preyed on her grief. You exploited her trust. This was not a mistake. This was a calculated predatory campaign to strip a widow of her security." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for half a year. Predatory, that was the word. For the counts of wire fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse, the judge continued, "I am sentencing you to 5 years in state prison." 5 years. A gasp went up from the back of the room. It wasn't me. It was Sarah. I didn't turn around. I watched the bailiff handcuff Charles. He didn't look at me again. He just slumped, defeated. As they led him away, I didn't feel happy. You don't feel happy when your child goes to jail. But I felt something else. I felt light. The weight of his lies was finally off my shoulders. The world knew the truth now. I wasn't the crazy old lady. I was the victim who fought back. I walked out of the courtroom, my legs feeling a bit shaky. I just wanted to go home and sleep for a week. "Angela." The voice came from behind me near the water fountains. I turned. It was Sarah. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She looked 10 years older than she had 6 months ago. I braced myself. I expected her to scream. I expected her to blame me again. I tightened my grip on my purse, ready to walk away. "What do you want, Sarah?" I asked defensively. She didn't scream. She started to cry. But these weren't angry tears. They were broken tears. "I didn't know," she sobbed. "I really didn't know." "You knew enough to call me selfish," I said. "You knew enough to cut me off from the grandkids." "He lied to me too," she whispered, wiping her nose with a tissue. "After the arrest, the investigators started digging into our personal accounts. The joint savings? The college funds for Leo and Mia? They're gone, Angela. All of it." My heart dropped. "The college funds?" "Empty," Sarah said. "He told me he moved them to a better yield account. He gambled it all away. We have nothing. The bank is coming for our house next week. We're moving into a 2-bedroom apartment near my parents." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "He told me you were hoarding money while we struggled. He told me you refused to help. I believed him because he's my husband. I'm so sorry, Angela. I was so scared of losing everything that I blamed you." I looked at this woman. For months, I had hated her. I had seen her as the enemy. But now, looking at her broken posture, I realized she was just another one of his victims. He had gaslighted her just as hard as he had gaslighted me. He had played us against each other to keep his secrets safe. He was very good at lying. I said softly, "Can you ever forgive me?" Sarah asked, "I know I said terrible things, but the kids, they miss you. Leo asks about you every day." The mention of Leo's name cracked the armor I had built around my heart. "I don't know if I can forgive you yet," I said honestly. "You hurt me, Sarah. You used the children as a weapon, just like he did." She flinched, nodding. "I know. I was desperate." But I continued, "I won't punish the children for the sins of their parents. That's what Charles did. I won't do that." I reached into my purse and pulled out a tissue, handing it to her. "I want to see them," I said. "Before you move, bring them to the house. I'll make spaghetti." Sarah took the tissue, nodding vigorously. "Yes, yes, of course. Thank you, Angela. Thank you." She walked away toward the exit, looking a little less heavy. I stood there in the hallway for a moment. I had lost a son today, officially, but as I watched Sarah leave, I realized I might have just saved my relationship with my grandchildren. The judge had given me justice, but standing my ground had given me something even more important, the truth. And the truth had finally set us all free. Putting the for sale sign in the front yard was the easiest thing I've done all year. Neighbors walked by and whispered, thinking I was selling because I was broke. They thought the bank had finally won or that the legal fees had bled me dry. They looked at me with pity. I didn't correct them. I just smiled and waved. Let them talk. They didn't know that the check sitting in my purse from the sale wasn't a desperate attempt to pay debts. It was a war chest. I didn't sell the house because I had to. I sold it because I wanted to. That house was a museum of memories, yes, but lately it had become a haunted house. Every time I looked at the dining room table, I saw Charles threatening me. Every time I looked at the driveway, I saw the police car. I needed to purge the ghosts. I bought a condo 3 miles away. It's perfect. It's on the ground floor. No stairs to worry about when my knees act up. It has a small patio where I grow tomatoes, and it overlooks the city park. It's bright, it's modern, and most importantly, it's mine. The deed has one name on it, Angela Stern. And nobody has the power to sign for it but me. But the real victory wasn't the condo. It was what I did with the rest of the equity. Last Tuesday, I sat down with a new attorney, an estate specialist recommended by David. I told him exactly what I wanted to do with the money I had recovered and the profit from the house. I want to set up an irrevocable trust. I told him, for Leo and Mia, for their college, their first homes, their weddings. That's a generous gift, the lawyer said. It's not just a gift, I corrected. It's a vault. And I need a specific clause in there. A clause that is ironclad. I leaned forward. My son, Charles, is never to access a single penny of this fund. Not as a trustee, not as a beneficiary, not even if he gets out of prison and claims he's changed. The money goes directly to the universities or the mortgage lenders. It never touches his hands. The lawyer typed it up exactly as I asked. I signed the papers with a steady hand. It felt like the final lock clicking into place. Charles had stolen from his own children to feed his ego. Now, I had ensured that even from behind bars or years down the road, he could never steal from them again. I had bypassed the wolf to feed the lambs directly. It was the ultimate financial protection. He could charm anyone he wanted, but he couldn't charm a legal contract. Yesterday, Sarah brought the kids to the park across the street from my new place. It was a crisp autumn day, the kind where the air smells like dried leaves and wood smoke. I sat on a bench, watching Leo climb the jungle gym. He looked so much like his father did at that age, but without the darkness. Mia was chasing a butterfly, laughing that pure, bubbling laugh that only children have. Sarah sat next to me. She looked healthier. The dark circles under her eyes were fading. She had found a job as a receptionist at a dental office. It wasn't glamorous, and they were living in a small apartment, but she was standing on her own 2 feet. She wasn't waiting for a man to save her anymore. We had that in common. They look happy, Sarah said, watching them. They are safe, I answered. That's what matters. Charles called collect yesterday. Sarah said quietly. He wanted to know if you had sold the house. He wanted to know how much we got for it. What did you tell him? I told him it was none of his business, Sarah said, and I hung up. I reached over and squeezed her hand. We weren't best friends. We probably never would be, but we were allies. We were 2 women who had survived the same storm. I looked back at my grandchildren. The wind blew through the trees, and for the first time in a year, I didn't feel a knot of anxiety in my chest. I felt light. I felt solvent. I felt strong. I used to think being a matriarch meant baking cookies and keeping the peace. I know better now. Being a matriarch means protecting the flock, even if the wolf is your own flesh and blood. It means making the hard calls when everyone else is too afraid to speak. It cost me a son to save a family. It was the hardest check I ever signed, but it bought me something money can't, the truth. And sitting here in the sunlight, watching my grandbabies play, I know I got the better deal. What city are you listening from? And what time is it there? Write it in the comments. And if you'd like to help me keep sharing these emotional, thrilling stories every day, even a small donation makes a big difference. It truly helps keep the channel alive. For more life stories like this, you can explore the other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll see 2 news stories I'm sure you'll enjoy. Click one and start listening right away. With love.